Rev up your engines!
Well, here we go again. GM is winning in the courts, but not the hearts of Americans. The Corvette Z06, they had a class action suit about having engine problems in them, which they seem to have, right? Well, guess what? The Ninth Court of Appeals dismissed it. People keep suing GM, and the court keeps saying, no, you're not responsible for that. It's just getting to be kind of ridiculous. If you remember the other one on the Corvettes, the wheels break, and they do, and they're cast wheels. They should have been forged. When you forge the metal, it's stronger. They cast it, and with all that horsepower, a bunch of them. Their spokes are just breaking right off from the rim and flying off. They took them to court and they said, oh, no, you can't sue us for that because we manufactured them, of course, to design, but it's design that's wrong. Of course, they designed it too. This is what's so ridiculous when you go to court. These lawyers find little technicalities and then they are not responsible. And it's their own mistake. They designed it. Again, GM wins in court because of technicalities. It gets to be ridiculous. And of course, if you've seen, I had a customer one, and I've seen other people on the internet say the same thing. GM just tells them, oh, these have noisy drivetrains, that the excessive valve train noise, that's normal in those engines. Okay, maybe it is normal, but it's not correct. And anybody that says it is out of their mind. If you remember, I made a video last year about the guy with the Toyota V6, I believe it was a 4Runner, and it was making all kinds of noise on startup. And they told him, oh, that's normal. Well, gee, I read a few months ago a guy had one, and the engine blew up, Toyota had to rebuild it. Well, they had to rebuild it because it wasn't made right. Now, it wasn't all of their engines because I had two customers come over. One had a new one with 15,000 miles, and one had a new one with 20,000 miles. The one made the noise. The other made no noise at all. The guy who had the one that made the noise, I said, did it always make this noise? He said, yeah, it made it since I bought it. So obviously, it wasn't built right. But then the other guy was worried because he said, gee, I watched your video. Now I'm worried that mine's going to have a problem. I said, did yours ever make a noise when it started? He said, no, it never made a noise. I said, well, your engine was built right and the other one wasn't. And Toyota had to warranty these other ones that actually have broken and had to repair them. Same thing with this. They're just covering their own heinies. And if they do break, they'll have to fix them under warranty for the individuals, but not a recall where they got to do them all over. That's why they fight this stuff. Because if they lose, then they got to fix them all for free. So they fight it tooth and nail with lawyers and little technical jargon. My advice is, don't buy their products. Then you don't have to deal with their crap that we won in court again, and you're stuck with a car that makes noise. I'm telling you about Korean car makers, especially Hyundai and Kia, how they don't make them all that well. Well, they just recalled 26,000 vehicles because they didn't glue the windshields right. They were using the wrong kind of paint. The glue didn't stick to it, and they got to do 26,000 windshields over. They found, and I quote, inferior adhesion between the windshield and structure. In other words, they weren't glued in right. Realize all cars' windshields are just glued on. That's what holds them together. It's very strong adhesive, but they're just glued on. The idiots used the wrong kind of paint. The paint didn't adhere to the glue, and then blah. Now, the dealerships will have to remove the windshields, then put the correct clear coat paint on, and then glue them back on. Well, let me tell you something. If you ever tried to remove a windshield from a car, they almost always break. So they're going to have to probably replace a whole bunch of those too. Now, if you have one and you go through this process, here's a warning. Look really closely when you get your car back, because if they did use your own windshield, pull it out and put it back in, check for cracks, because they'll often start to crack. And if you see cracks, take it right back and say, you cracked the windshield. I want a new one. Don't give me this garbage that you took it out and glued it in, because when you took it out, you cracked it. That often happens. And they don't care. They're not making any money doing this. It's all a money loser for the companies. So, if you do have one and you take it in and you get it back, look closely with a flashlight all around the edge. You see them cracking, demand them to put a new one in because they didn't do it right. These are for the Santa Fe's, the Sonatas, and the Elantras. So, if you're worried about it, go to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.org website, look it up with the VIN number, see if you need it and take it in. And like I say, check that windshield when you get it back to make sure it's not cracked. Because if they reuse your old windshield, odds are it's going to crack. Natch Hutchinson once says, I got a 2004 Chevy Trailblazer LS. It stutters between 55 to 65 and only when accelerating. I replaced the coils and spark plugs. There's no check engine light. What do you think? Since there's no check engine light, you don't have any stored codes. But codes only store store when you go plus or minus 20% more or off. Two things. First thing, change your fuel filter. That might fix the whole thing. Your car doesn't know what the fuel pressure is because it's an old 2004, so the computer doesn't know. If the fuel pressure is low, it won't trip a code because it doesn't know what the pressure is. Pray it's that. If it's not that, you can have the pump pressure tested. And if it's low, you replace the pump. You don't have to check engine light on. But, like I say, if it's less than 20%, it's not going to trip the code, but it won't run perfectly. So if it's not the filter or the pump, and it's still not tripping the code, you get a guy like me, put on his fancy scan tool. It's all the reams of data. We record it, and then we play it back and look at it. And the good machines that we have are color-coded. When it's black, it's good data. When it's different colors, it's somewhat off. Now, if it's red, then you know it's bad. But there's also yellow that's in between. So if we went somewhere and then found out, oh, look, the fuel injector data isn't red, but it's yellow, and that would cause hesitation, then we would look into the fuel injectors. You could have dirty or worn out fuel injectors doing the same thing. Then you got to go into the data. It gets complicated. So pray it's something simple like you need a fuel filter, and of course check the air filter too. That doesn't suck enough air. It'll do the same thing. Bart says, you used an Xtool scanner in one of your videos. Are they good? What do you think of the A80 Pro or the Xtool D8? Okay, now he spelled it EX. It's not EX. It's just plain X, the letter X tool. It's kind of a newish Chinese company that's making tools. And for the price, I think they make some of the best tools out there. I've got a D8 that I've been trying out the last 3 months. And I got to say, I'm impressed for the price. It does some of the stuff that a $3,000-$4,000 scan tool does at a cost of like $600-$700 for the whole tool. Now, I'm impressed by these guys. They're kind of newcomers, but being newcomers, they got to prove themselves. So they got to put a lot of technology into their scan tools because they are trying to build up an image. Now, strangely enough, here's what I found with that company, that Xtool D8. It's a good scan tool for that money, a very good scan tool. But the odd thing is, they also have one of those dongles that's cheaper that you plug in and use your smartphone, and it was a piece of crap. So, on the opposite from most companies, some companies make really good cheap scan tools, but really crappy, more expensive ones. These guys make better, more expensive ones than the really cheap ones. Kind of interesting, you know? Hey, more power to that because there's a zillion cheap scan tools out there, and they all can do basic stuff, so it doesn't mean all that much because there's a zillion you can choose from. But when it comes to the higher end ones, then you start, what am I getting for my $600? And with these guys, I gotta say, it's pretty good for that amount of money. I've compared it to some of my $3,000-$4,000 scan tools, and sometimes it actually does a little bit more than they do. Yeah, if you don't mind spending that kind of money, they're good, but it's not EX, it's just Xtool. Beaver says, what is the secret to applying touch-up paint without making it look even worse than the minor scratch you started out with? Yeah, look like somebody with bad fingernail job, where they go to the manicurist and they put too much blobby paint on, their fingernails look horrible when you get close, right? This is the real problem. Your car was spray painted. Spray paint is thousandths of an inch thick, not very thick, and it's all sprayed at once to make it uniform. If you're talking about trying to get one of those little bottles and you take it out and there's a little brush inside and you paint them on, it's impossible to get them right. It's too thick. It's just too thick. And then you got a paint over a spray. It's not as uniform as a spray is. If you do a touch-up paint, you really got to buy a spray. Now, there's companies out there, I just made a video a while back on one, check it out, using spray touch-up paint. That's the only way to do it. And even then, it's very hard because you kind of polish around the area to make it even, get a little really fine sandpaper, get it as smooth as you can, clean it off with like isopropyl alcohol. Then you got to lightly spray the color, the base color. Let it dry, you might polish it a little, do that 2 or 3 times. You gotta spray it with a clear coat. So understand one thing about paint. The paint that you see is the base coat, the color. Why it shines is because it's sprayed with clear coat. And if you don't clear coat it, then you'll have flat paint that you painted on a scratch, and around it is clear coat that shines, which makes the flat paint stand up even more. So you gotta clear coat. The only problem is when you're trying to do a scratch area, getting it perfect with the rest is really hard, and blending it in perfectly is really hard too. It's not that easy to make it look perfect. Now, on the other hand, if you are good at airbrushing, you can buy the raw paint and put it in a little airbrush. The little airbrush They have little glass canisters you put a little paint in. And if you're good at airbrushing, you can do a pretty good job at that. I'm horrible at airbrushing. I tried it, it came out like crap. I'm not a painter, I'm a mechanic. But if you've ever tried airbrushing, you can get them pretty good. But even then, it's airbrushed. It is painted on, and you would have to airbrush the base color and then airbrush clear coat the next day on top of it. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.